My name is Helen Moore, and tonight I'm standing alone in my kitchen, staring at something I thought I would never see again, an envelope with my daughter's handwriting on it. The paper is thick and elegant, the kind people use when they want to impress strangers, not reconnect with their mother. The kettle behind me whistles itself into a frenzy before going quiet, but I barely hear it. My whole attention is trapped inside 5 letters written across the front, my name. I pick it up carefully, like it might bruise if I touch it too hard. For 20 years, neither of my children has spoken to me. Not a call, not a text, not a birthday greeting, nothing but a long, hollow silence that settled into my life so deeply I began planning my days around not hearing from them. I convinced myself that kind of forgetting took effort, that they had to choose it. So why write to me now? I slide a finger under the flap, but I don't open it yet. My reflection stares back from the microwave door, an older woman with tired eyes, still foolish enough to hope for something soft. I wish I didn't feel that hope. Hope is dangerous at my age. Whatever is inside this envelope, it isn't an apology, and it isn't love. That much I know before I even tear the seal. Still, my hands move. I open it. And just like that, my quiet life begins to crack. The invitation rests on my table like something fragile, as if the wrong breath might make it disappear. I read the words again. Mom. It would mean a lot if you came, and they feel impossible. For 2 decades, the only things my mailbox held were bills, supermarket coupons, and the occasional charity letter asking for donations I couldn't afford. Tonight, I'm holding a doorway I thought had been bricked over years ago. I set the invitation down and walk to the sink, letting the warm water run over my hands longer than necessary. It steadies me a little. When you spend enough time alone, your body becomes your only company, your only place to anchor yourself. But even the warmth can't reach whatever part of me has begun to twist awake. I dry my hands and return to the table, to that small square of gold-embossed paper that already feels heavier than it should. The last time Lauren wrote anything to me, she was still in college. A quick note before finals. "I love you, Mom," scrawled at the bottom. That was before Ethan, before the upscale neighborhoods and the perfect family Christmas photos I saw through other people's screens. Before she started living a life where I didn't seem to fit. I should have seen the distance forming. But love makes you blind in practical ways. You excuse small silences. You rationalize missed calls. You tell yourself everyone gets busy, though deep down you recognize the shift in tone when your presence becomes an inconvenience. I take the card again, running my thumb along the edge. A country club address is printed at the bottom, the kind of place where I've only ever been as hired help years ago, working long evenings refilling water glasses for parties, where mothers like me watch their children succeed from the periphery. It strikes me as almost ironic that Lauren wants me there now, but irony is too delicate a word for the ache inside my ribs. I stand and walk toward my bedroom closet. Inside hangs a dress I haven't worn in years, a navy blue one with soft sleeves that made me feel elegant the one time I put it on. I touch the fabric. It still feels like a promise I never kept to myself. Maybe it's foolish, maybe it's desperate, but the idea of wearing it again sends a small shimmer of warmth through me. Not joy, just the echo of something close to it. I hold the dress against my body in the mirror. The fit will be tighter, the lines around my neck deeper. The woman staring back looks older than she feels on good days, but she also looks like someone who deserves at least one night where her name is spoken without tension. I change into the dress just to see how it falls. It clings differently now, but it still carries a quiet dignity. For a moment, I'm startled by how emotion rises, not from vanity, but from the sudden possibility that my daughter, after all these years, might finally want me beside her again. I hate how quickly that hope blooms. Hope is a dangerous seed. It sprouts in the cracks where you swore nothing could grow anymore. When I step out of the dress, I fold it carefully across my bed. I'm aware of how deliberate my movements are, how ritualistic, as if part of me is afraid the universe will change its mind if I rush. I walk back to the kitchen and sit down again. The room feels smaller than before. I can hear my heartbeat in my ears, steady but uncertain. I let myself think of the last real conversation I had with Lauren. She had called to say she was moving in with Ethan. I remember congratulating her, telling her I was happy she'd found someone who treated her well. She'd thanked me politely, and then, with a hint of discomfort, she'd said she might not be around much once her new job started. I assumed she meant for a few weeks. I could never have imagined she meant forever. A little later, I thought of Daniel, my son, always quick with his opinions, always certain of his future. The last time he visited me, he was still in law school, still close enough that we could eat dinner together without feeling like strangers. He'd argued about politics, about the state of the world, about anything really. And I remember laughing because he sounded so much like his father in those moments, fierce and principled, even when he was wrong. But time reshaped him into someone I no longer recognized, someone who let the gap between us widen until it swallowed everything. I look back at the invitation. I try to imagine what seeing them again will feel like, what kind of reception I should expect. I'm too old to pretend a single card can undo 20 years of silence. Still, there's something undeniable about the way my chest tightens at the thought of standing near them again, hearing them say, "Mom," without hesitation. The kettle clicks softly as it cools, and I pour myself a cup of tea, letting the steam rise around my face. I sit there a long time, holding the cup, absorbing its warmth. Something in me, some old instinct I thought had died, whispers that maybe Lauren does want me there. Maybe this invitation is a beginning rather than a transaction. I know better than to believe that completely, but I also know I'm going to the party. As the tea cools in my hands, I fold the invitation and slip it into my purse. Tomorrow, I'll pull out my dress again. Tomorrow, I'll decide on shoes, on earrings, on how to gather my hair so the gray looks intentional rather than forgotten. But tonight, I allow myself the smallest flicker of hope. The evening of the party arrives colder than I expected, the kind of cold that settles into your sleeves no matter how tightly you pull them closed. The taxi driver keeps the heater high, and I sit in the back smoothing the navy dress across my knees, trying not to think about how long it's been since I dressed for anything other than errands or doctor appointments. As we approach the country club, golden lights spill across the driveway, bouncing off polished cars and winter shrubs trimmed into perfect shapes. It's the kind of place where people come to be seen, not remembered. When the taxi stops, a valet opens my door with professional politeness. I step out slowly, trying to gather myself before walking into a world that once felt unreachable. Inside the lobby, warm air and soft piano music wrap around me. A hostess stands at a podium with a tablet. When I give my name, Helen Moore, she scrolls, nods, and smiles like everything is perfectly normal. I wish it felt that way. She leads me toward the banquet hall, through the doors. I see a sea of people already gathered, glasses in hand, laughter rising above the music. The room glitters with silver centerpieces and tall candles, each table dressed more elegantly than anything I could afford. For a moment, I linger at the threshold, unsure if walking inside at all is a mistake. Then I hear my daughter's voice. Lauren stands near the front, wearing a deep emerald dress that flatters her in a way I've never seen. Her hair is styled, her smile bright and camera-ready. When her eyes land on me, They widen just a little. Surprise, not joy, but she crosses the room with enough grace that most people wouldn't notice the hesitation. "Mom," she says, kissing my cheek lightly. "I'm glad you came." Her voice is warm but distant, like she's speaking through glass. Before I can respond, someone calls her name from across the room, and she excuses herself with a hand on my arm that lingers only a second. I watch her disappear into a group of friends who look more familiar to her than I do. A server approaches and offers me a flute of champagne. I accept it, mostly to have something to hold. My seat is not at the family table, but at a smaller one near the wall, beside two people I don't recognize. They smile politely, the way you smile at a stranger boarding the same train. I sit quietly, sipping champagne that tastes sharper than I expected. From my seat, I can see the main table clearly, Lauren and Ethan at the center, their children lined up neatly beside them. The kids laugh and whisper to one another, unaware of me entirely. They don't look intentionally rude, they look uninformed, as if no one has ever told them their grandmother exists. That realization stings more deeply than I let on. I keep my face composed, though something inside me starts to tilt. Dinner is served in stages. A server places a salad in front of me with a gentle nod. I try to focus on eating, but my eyes drift too easily to Daniel across the room. He looks older, more polished, but colder too. When he finally notices me watching, he gives a small nod that could be mistaken for courtesy. It feels more like acknowledgement of an inconvenience. Midway through the entree, Ethan rises and taps a microphone. The room quiets immediately. He speaks with the confidence of a man used to applause, praising Lauren's accomplishments, their children, their home. It is a speech designed for admiration, and the room obliges. Then he shifts. "Tonight," he says, "isn't just about celebrating Lauren. It's about celebrating family and the legacy we're building together." The word legacy lands awkwardly, like a stone dropped into water. Ethan begins talking about a beach house in Florida, something he and Lauren have been planning for years, a place for family summers, holidays, memories that would last for generations. As he speaks, Daniel steps up beside him, holding a folder. My stomach tightens. I know that folder. I've seen ones like it in his hands before, back when he was still in school and wanted to show me every contract he drafted. This isn't nostalgia. This is business. "We've already secured the property," Daniel says into the microphone. "All we need is one final contribution from our family matriarch." The word slices through the room. People turn toward me. Even the servers pause. Ethan smiles wide. "Mom, would you join us up here?" I feel every breath in the room shift. My chair scrapes the floor as I stand, legs shaky, heart pounding. I walk toward the stage because refusing in the middle of the room feels worse, though not by much. Daniel places the folder on a small table near the microphone. Papers are arranged neatly, a pen waiting on top. I recognize numbers even before I can fully read them, numbers that match the amount I have in my savings. He explains the deal with calm precision. My investment would secure the down payment. My name would appear on some paperwork, though not the kind with real authority. In return, I would have a place to stay during family vacations, a room of my own, as if that makes this generous. I scan the crowd. Lauren is smiling, but it's tight, uncertain. Ethan watches me like a man waiting for a signature he already expects. Daniel simply nods toward the pen. Something inside me hardens. I lift my eyes and meet Daniel's. "No," I say, letting the single word fill the microphone. A few people gasp. Others whisper. Ethan's smile collapses just slightly. "Mom," he says gently. "Maybe you didn't understand. I understood perfectly. The room goes silent, and for the first time in 20 years, I feel utterly clear. I turn away from the stage, stepping back into the crowd, leaving the pen exactly where it lies. The whispers rise behind me, but I keep walking. By the time I reach the hallway, one thing is certain. The hallway outside the banquet room is quiet, dimly lit by wall sconces that cast long shadows across the carpet. I walk until the music softens behind me, until the murmur of guests fades into something distant and forgettable. My breath steadies only slightly before I hear footsteps approaching, sharp, familiar, impatient. Daniel reaches me first. He doesn't bother hiding the irritation tightening his jaw. "Mom," he says, lowering his voice even though the hallway is empty. "What was that?" I face him slowly. "That?" I say. "Was me saying no?" He exhales like he's the one who's been wronged, like my refusal has somehow embarrassed him more than 20 years of silence ever embarrassed me. "You blindsided us," he mutters. "Ethan already spoke with the realtor. We were counting on you." The words settle over me with a heaviness that stings, not because they hurt, but because they confirm a truth I'd been trying not to acknowledge. They didn't invite me out of longing or love. They invited me because I was a missing piece on a spreadsheet. I keep my voice steady. "You didn't ask me," I say. "You presented a signature in front of a room full of strangers. That's not family. That's pressure." And for a moment, he seems genuinely confused, as if pressure and family have always been interchangeable in his mind. "This is for all of us," he insists. "A family retreat, a long-term investment. You'll have a place there too." "I have a place," I tell him softly, "just not in that house, and clearly not in yours." He looks away, blinking quickly. Not with emotion, just calculation, the kind he's trained to make in courtrooms. "You're overreacting," he says, "and you're making things harder than they need to be." A small, tired laugh slips out of me. Harder for who? He doesn't answer. Instead, he straightens his jacket, steps back, and finally says, "If you won't help us, then don't expect to be part of anything moving forward." The words should break something inside me, but nothing breaks. Nothing bends. I simply feel something click into place, something I didn't know I was ready to feel. "Daniel," I say gently, "I haven't been part of anything for a very long time." His expression shifts, as if he wasn't prepared for honesty, stripped of anger. Before he can form a reply, a group of guests enters the hallway, chattering loudly. He takes it as his chance to leave, mumbling, "We'll talk later," though we both know we won't. I step outside into the cold night. The air hits my face with a clarity that feels almost medicinal. I pull my coat tighter and walk toward the taxi stand. The valet signals a driver, and soon I'm seated in the back of another warm cab, the glow of the country club shrinking in the rear window. As we merge onto the main road, I finally let my shoulders drop. The silence inside the car feels different from the silence I've lived with for years, not heavy or accusing, just available, like an empty room that could hold something new. I think about the dinner, the speeches, the sea of unfamiliar faces. I think about Lauren's hesitant smile, the way she didn't introduce me to her friends. I think about the children who never looked my way, not because they were cruel, but because they didn't know I existed. I think about Daniel's voice behind the microphone, smooth and confident, asking for my life savings as if it were a natural extension of sonship. And most of all, I think about the sudden calm that washed over me when I said no. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity, the kind that arrives quietly after years of waiting for someone else to choose you. The taxi turns into my street. Lights from my apartment window glow faintly, casting long shadows across the icy sidewalk. When I step inside, The warmth of the room greets me, familiar but no longer comforting. My life here has been shaped around the absence of my children. Every routine, every holiday, every quiet evening has revolved around not hearing from them. Tonight makes something unmistakably clear. I don't want to shape the rest of my years around that same emptiness. I hang my coat, turn on the small lamp by the window, and sit at my kitchen table, the same place where I opened the invitation. The card still sits there, its gold lettering catching the light. For the first time, I see it for what it truly is, not a bridge, but a transaction. I open my laptop and stare at the blank screen. My hands hover above the keyboard before I finally begin typing words I never imagined I'd write. Request for legal consultation, estate planning, name change. Each keystroke feels like a door unlocking. When I hit send, a quiet resolve settles over me. I'm not running away. I'm choosing myself. Something I should have done long before 20 years turned into a lifetime. And as the message leaves my outbox, I know with absolute certainty the attorney I contacted replied the next morning. Her name was Claire Bennett, and when I met her in her small office downtown, she greeted me with a firm handshake and a quiet understanding that made it strangely easy to speak. I told her everything, carefully, honestly, without dramatics. She listened without interruption, taking notes until she finally leaned back and said, "You're not the first parent to walk this road, but you deserve a clean one moving forward." Those words settled into me with a kind of relief I hadn't expected. We updated my will, removed Lauren and Daniel entirely, and arranged for the rest of my modest estate to go to charities that would never forget the people they helped. Then Claire walked me through the process of legally changing my name. It took weeks, but when the papers were finalized and I saw Iris Lane in bold print, something inside me exhaled for the first time in years. I left Harborfield soon after. Seabrook, a quiet coastal town 2 hours away, became my refuge. The apartment I rented was small with peeling paint and a crooked balcony, but it overlooked the ocean, and the sound of waves felt like a promise that the world still held gentle things. I joined a seniors art group, met neighbors who didn't ask about my past, and allowed myself to live days that were mine alone. I thought that would be the end of it. But endings don't always arrive when you expect them to. One afternoon, Claire called to tell me Daniel had filed a civil claim. He argued that I had abandoned the family financially and violated a supposed agreement to contribute to the beach house. Hearing it out loud might have enraged another parent, but I only felt a dull ache, an ache born of recognition, not surprise. I appeared in court under my new name. Daniel stood across the room, polished and confident, speaking as if the last 20 years were an insignificant formality. Lauren sat beside him, eyes down, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I wondered if she was ashamed of the lawsuit or ashamed of being seen with me. The difference didn't matter anymore. Claire presented the facts with quiet precision. No contract, no agreement, no evidence of ongoing relationship, and most importantly, no obligation, legal or moral, for a woman my age to fund her adult children's real estate ambitions. When the judge asked if I wished to speak, I rose slowly. "I hoped for a long time that they would call me," I said, keeping my voice steady. I waited through birthdays, holidays, seasons changing. When they didn't, I accepted it. But I won't let silence be rewritten as consent. The judge nodded, dismissed their claim, and issued an order preventing further harassment. His final remark was simple but sharp enough to linger. Family is not an inheritance to be collected. Outside the courthouse, Daniel tried to approach me. I shook my head before he could speak. "You made your choice," I said. Now I'm making mine. I walked away, down the courthouse steps, toward a future that no longer needed their permission. Back in Seabrook, the sky was softening into evening. I sat on my balcony, listening to waves break against the shore. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. The life I have now is small, but it is mine. I paint. I cook for neighbors. I laugh with women my age who know loss and reinvention and aren't afraid to talk about either. Sometimes I think of Lauren's children and wonder if they'll ever learn my name. If they do, I hope they hear it the same way I do now, with dignity, with distance, and without regret. I did not disappear. I simply walked back into my own life,